Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the first 24 hours of the air war that kicked off Operation Desert Storm, a campaign that would change modern warfare forever. When we think about the start of a war, we usually picture something happening right on the battlefield. But this story, it begins here, thousands of miles away. It starts with 7 B-52 bombers taking off from an airbase in Louisiana on a top-secret mission that's not only going to start a war, but also completely shatter a world record.
Just try to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this. This wasn't some short hop over the border. We're talking about a 14,000-mile round trip. A staggering 35-hour flight that was only possible because a whole fleet of refueling tankers kept them topped up in midair. And even before they made the turn to go home, they unleashed 35 cruise missiles at critical Iraqi targets. This was a massive statement, a signal of global power projection like nothing we'd seen before.
But while those B-52s were still hours away, chugging across the globe, the very first shots of the war were about to be fired. A much stealthier, much more clandestine mission was kicking off on the ground. And really, everything that followed depended on its success. This was Task Force Normandy. Picture this. 2 small teams of helicopters, flying so low they're practically scraping the desert floor just to stay invisible to enemy radar. They sneak across the border completely undetected. Their mission is surgical. Take out 2 key Iraqi early warning radar sites. The goal? To punch a blind spot, a totally safe corridor, right into Iraq's air defenses just moments before the main wave of aircraft arrived. This was literally the key that would unlock the door to Baghdad.
Okay, so all this incredible military action, it really begs the question, right? How on earth did it get to this point? To really understand the ferocity of this first night, we need to rewind the clock about 6 months and look at the intense pressures that pushed Iraq into making a decision that would turn the entire world against it.
And like with so many conflicts, it really boils down to money. After a long, brutal war with Iran, Iraq was in a terrible spot financially. They were saddled with an absolutely crushing $80 billion in foreign debt. The country was in an economic stranglehold. On top of that debt, Saddam Hussein had to pay for his massive million-man army, the 4th largest in the world at the time. Get this, it was costing a staggering 40% of the country's entire economic output. It was just completely unsustainable. His regime was teetering on the edge of collapse. And the final nail in the coffin was the price of oil. Saddam himself laid it out. For every single dollar that the price of a barrel of oil dropped, Iraq lost $1 billion in revenue. So when he saw his neighbors, especially Kuwait, overproducing oil and driving the price down, he didn't just see it as competition. He saw it as economic warfare. And so, on August 2nd, 1990, Iraqi tanks rolled into Kuwait. Saddam basically made a huge gamble. He figured the world would protest, maybe make some angry speeches, but ultimately do nothing. Well, he could not have been more wrong. The invasion triggered immediate UN sanctions and kicked off Operation Desert Shield. And when the UN's January 15th deadline for Iraq to get out of Kuwait passed, the line in the sand had officially been crossed. And what happened next was Operation Desert Shield, which became the largest military alliance since World War II. Over 6 months, 35 nations sent about 1 million troops to Saudi Arabia to defend the kingdom and prepare to liberate Kuwait if it came to that. The logistics of this alone were just unprecedented, and it set the stage for a massive conflict. So this slide really lays out the strategic puzzle. On paper, the coalition had this overwhelming air power, more than 2,200 combat aircraft against Iraq's 550. But, and this is a big but, Iraq had one of the densest, most sophisticated air defense networks on the planet. With thousands of missiles and hundreds of radar sites, Baghdad was, without a doubt, one of the most heavily defended cities in the world. The deadline passed. Nothing happened. So the time was set. H-hour. The official start of the air war was scheduled for exactly 2:30 a.m. on January 17th. And at that precise moment, the Apache helicopters of Task Force Normandy unleashed hell on those radar sites, and Operation Desert Storm began. Now, the coalition's plan for that first night was like a complex 4-part symphony of destruction. First, Task Force Normandy blinds the low-level radar. Second, F-117 stealth bombers and cruise missiles sneak in and decapitate the command centers in Baghdad. Third, decoy drones are sent in to fool and expose what's left of Iraq's air defenses. And only then, with the coast clear, would the main wave of 668 aircraft swarm in to hit targets all across the country. So here's a wild little story. How did the commanders know if one of their most important strikes was successful? I mean, the stealth bombers had to maintain complete radio silence. They couldn't just call and say, "Hey, target hit." So the planners in Saudi Arabia did what anyone would do. They turned on CNN. They knew a key target was Baghdad's international communications tower. At the exact second the bomb was supposed to hit, the live feed from the reporter in Baghdad went dead. And the whole command center just erupted in cheers. The mission was a success.
This eyewitness account is just incredible. It really captures the surreal, terrifying precision of this new kind of warfare. For people on the ground, can you even imagine watching a cruise missile literally fly down the street at eye level before slamming into its target? It must have felt like something out of a science fiction movie.
So, as those first bombs from the stealth fighters and cruise missiles started hitting their marks, the hornet's nest was officially stirred. The sky over Baghdad just erupted with thousands of anti-aircraft guns, filling the night with streams of tracer fire. It was a furious display, but ultimately it was a blind wall of fire. They were just shooting at ghosts. And this is where the coalition's plan got really, really clever. It was a brilliant bait and switch. The U.S. Navy launched a bunch of cheap decoy drones and sent them flying towards Baghdad. The Iraqi air defense crews saw them on their screens, switched on their powerful tracking radars, and started firing off expensive missiles. But what they didn't see were the coalition jets just lurking in the darkness, waiting for those radar signals to light up and tell them exactly where to shoot. They nicknamed this little trap Fubar's Party, and it was a massive success. The Iraqi defenses wasted a ton of valuable missiles on fake targets, and by turning on their radars, they basically signed their own death warrants. The waiting coalition jets fired over 75 anti-radiation missiles, taking out about 35 Iraqi missile sites and clearing a safe path right into the heart of Baghdad. But look, not every mission was this high-tech, high-altitude game of chess. While stealth jets and decoys were outsmarting defenses from miles up, some of the most dangerous work fell to the British Royal Air Force. Their tornado jets were tasked with runway busting, flying extremely low and fast over heavily defended airfields to physically drop bombs and destroy the runways. This account from one of those tornado crews is just harrowing. A computer glitch forces them to fly higher than they should be, which makes them a bigger, slower, and much more vulnerable target. An Iraqi missile hits their jet and they're forced to eject. They both survived, but they were captured and became prisoners of war. It's just a brutal reminder of the incredible risks and the high price paid when things went wrong. When you look at the numbers from day one, the scale of the coalition's air operation is just staggering. They flew over 2,700 missions in 24 hours. The Iraqi Air Force, by comparison, flew about 120. This wasn't just an advantage. This was total and complete air dominance, allowing the coalition to strike pretty much whenever and wherever they wanted. But that dominance definitely came at a cost. The coalition had 19 aircraft either lost or damaged in that first day. And while the exchange rate was massively in their favor, 8 Iraqi planes were destroyed, it's still a stark reminder that even with all the technology and training in the world, these missions were incredibly dangerous. So what's the final verdict after those first 24 hours? Well, Iraqi command and control was in shambles. Baghdad's powerful air defenses were seriously hurt, but they were far from eliminated. The crucial thing, though, is that the coalition achieved all of its main goals, and with fewer losses than many had feared. The pattern for the next 5 weeks of the air campaign was set. This stunning display of military power was really just the opening act. Those first 24 hours were a decisive military success, a clear demonstration of a whole new kind of warfare. But it left the entire world watching and wondering what the true human and political cost of this victory was ultimately going to be.